general manager of the Capitol Theater. However, previous to about 3 months ago, I was the director of operations here at Ruth Eckerd Hall for the last 16 years. And today I'm going to take you on a little tour behind the scenes of Ruth Eckerd Hall, primarily on the main stage, although we'll go into the lobby and I'll teach you a little bit about the history of that. Maybe you'll learn something, maybe you'll know everything that I'm going to tell you, but feel free to ask questions as we go. It's only about 4.5 hours, so if at some point you need to step out, please just feel free to leave. No, actually it's going to be about a half hour, so I won't keep you too long. But we will go backstage and I will tell you a few little stories back there. And then, like I say, we'll go on stage and I'll tell you how those rating systems work, and then into the lobby. We'll talk a little bit about the Frank Lloyd Wright aspects of the hall. Again, hopefully you'll learn something from me. And again, feel free to ask questions as we go. I do speak a little fast because I want to get a lot of information out there. And I think I'll hopefully answer most of your questions. But if not, like I say, please don't hesitate to ask. We're going to start in here, obviously. This is the Murray Studio Theater. Ray and Nancy Murray bought the naming rights for this venue. This is what's called a black box theater. It's 180 seats in a retractable bleacher setting, but it's also reconfigured in a lot of different ways in that we can do a dinner like you just had. The seats can be pulled out, we can do a performance on this end, or they can be retracted, we can do a show in the round, we can do rehearsals, the Pinellas Youth Symphony practices here, also the Clearwater Chorus, ETC, the Education Department utilizes this almost all the time for their classes. So this is a very busy space, but it's also a standalone space in that we can do something in this venue completely separate what's happening on the main stage or what's happening up in the great room. And I know pretty much everyone's been up in the great room. We're not going to make it up there on this tour, but again, that's a separate entity, completely separate space, has its own entry, has its own restrooms. It completely could be a standalone, and that's actually very common for us to do a show on the main stage with 2,180 people, do something in here for 180 people, and maybe a banquet or a meeting upstairs in the great room for maybe 400 people. So it gets a little bit busy around here, especially for the food and beverage staff, because they do all of the food in-house these days. So everything that you're having is being done in-house by Ovations. They came on in November. So all the food that's happening in the cafe or the buffets or up in the great room in this space or anywhere else is all being done by them. So it does get busy. The only conflict we have is in the parking lots, and that's where it really does get a little kooky because all these spaces where they may be separate all share the same parking lot. Okay, so that's this space. We're going to go here and up the ramp and to the backstage, so follow me if you would. Yes, ma'am?
Is there a stage behind that?
There is a little bit more room, yes. It does go...
Is it up the raised stage?
No, no, no. It's just back to the wall. Just a little bit more space to the back wall. We have a screen here. They can bring this in. There's a projector up there for the screen so we can show movies or presentations. But no, this is about it. If you see a stage in here, we brought in a stage that's part of it. So we have movable stages.
Okay.
Yep.
Just one.
Sure. All right, follow me. We're going to go this way.
Is it a Dodge Dart or a Cadillac?
Okay, the reason I brought you to this level is a couple of reasons, the way we did it. First of all, you notice we just came up a ramp. Why did we come up a ramp? Well, a few years ago, actually about 12 years ago, we did a renovation of this facility. The original building was built almost a little over 30 years ago, and I'll talk about that when we get to the lobby. But the original building, where we're standing, was outside. Okay? This was not here at that time. We expanded, a $24 million renovation, added the education wing, and added this loading dock. So we would have been outside in the parking lot at this point. However, Frank Lloyd Wright, who is the designer of this hall, and like I said, I'll give you that detail in a minute, was very short in stature. And so a lot of his buildings have very low ceilings. Well, building codes do not allow the ceiling heights that he designed. So this building, a two-story building, has very short ceilings. Well, when we built the new building, we couldn't have as short a ceiling. We had to have the higher ceiling, and we wanted to have a walk-on deck from the great room. So if you're in the great room and you walk out onto the balcony, it's smooth. Well, because of those height differences, we actually had to sink that building down to make that height the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why you have to go down a ramp to get into that building, so that's the new building over there. Also, I stop right here because this is our security booth. So everybody that comes into the building, other than going through the administrative entrance by Jan, comes through here. We park the buses and the trucks for the touring shows out here. Everyone comes in Checkpoint Charlie's here and then goes into the backstage area. We have 9 cameras that are all monitored, or 16 cameras that are all not monitored in this space, along with our fire systems and everything else. Whenever there's the public in the building, we have security here. We're probably doing rounds. No. You're on camera right now. There's a camera back there. You cannot walk in through any entry, and you can't actually drive onto campus without being on a camera. Thank you, and knock on wood, we have not had any real problems with that, but if we did, we were able to keep an eye on and go backwards and see what happened in the instance that may have happened, and hopefully on camera. So just to give you a little bit more safety that you're always being watched, but it's a good one. So, all right, let's go backstage.
We have a joke in my house that they come out and get some kid in the front and do something. You know what? You can security.
The artists will hang out throughout the day. Yeah, a little bit lower ceiling. This is original building. So this is where the artists hang out throughout the day. Most shows start their production around 8 a.m., 10 a.m. in the morning. The trucks back up to the loading dock and we unload their equipment onto the main stage. It gets set up throughout the day and tested. There's some sound checks, and then the show usually starts around 8 o'clock. 10 o'clock it's over. Afterwards, the stagehands pack it all back up, put it in the truck, the buses and trucks leave, they go to the next venue, we go to sleep and start it all over the next day. So throughout the day, those artists and stagehands are here and they don't have an opportunity to leave and go get something to eat, so we feed them. You're going to see the catering room in just a moment. And then the dressing rooms are where they're able to relax, take a shower, just watch some TV, get dressed and get going. There's another full set of dressing rooms above me. Those are what we call our big team rooms. They're a bigger size for the choruses, let's say the ballets and the operas, or even the Broadway shows where they've got 15 women and 15 men. Those go in the chorus rooms upstairs. Interestingly, with the renovation, those were down here. However, we were doing catering in those rooms, and it was actually kind of disgusting, because you'd be sitting there eating right by the bathrooms and the urinals, and it's like, no, we need to do something about that. So the renovation, we gave ourselves a very nice catering room, and you're going to see that in just a second. We actually widened this hallway. It's a little bit wider than what you would normal, but a lot of the ballets come in and they have these big steel trunks with all their outfits. So you put a trunk here on both sides, and then the doors open up. You're still going down the hallway like this sometimes. So that's why this hallway is a little bit larger. We do have 2 star suites, one here and here, and you're more than welcome to look in those. Interestingly enough, we matched those up pretty good, the star suites. However, it's kind of funny, Robert Friedman and I joked about it, because about the 3rd show after we opened was going to be the 3 tenors. And we only had 2 star suites. So one of them wound up over here. But that's okay. That doesn't happen too often. Usually it's fine with 2 people. But yeah, 2 star suites, a little meeting area, and then a dressing area and a bathroom. You're more than welcome to take a look back there. That doorway there is where our wardrobe room is. We have 3 sets of washers and dryers, steamers, irons, all kinds of fun stuff in there. A lot of the Broadways have a lot of hair and makeup and wigs and costumes, so they're able to work out of that space.
Kind of interesting.
Yeah, so take your peek in. The rest of the rooms are what I call big mirrors and bright lights. That's pretty much what the rest of the rooms are. These are a little bit nicer. As we go down, you can take a look inside. Also, all the black and whites on the wall are from our stage, on the main stage. And if they've been signed, most likely the artist has been back. So it's now kind of a thing to be on the wall. You know, if somebody comes by and goes, wait, I played here 4 times. Why am I not on the wall? So. Depending on the show. Again, all that food service is done in-house. And so sit down 65, we've got TVs in there, ice machines, restrooms, it's all. You gotta remember, this is their home for the day. As I kind of alluded, they don't have an opportunity to go out and go to a restaurant or whatever. They're here. It's also why we have this as secured, because you know what, they hang out, they're just like you and I, and you know, they don't want you to see them without their glitz and glamour on. So this is where they do the glitz and the glamour to go out and see you on stage. Back here, they're hanging out. I mean, David Copperfield walks around most of the day in a white robe. He just is relaxed and hanging out till showtime. So, all right, let's go on to the stage.
Maybe he's magically made his clothes go away.
I love it. The best trip we had is that magic.
Here, I'll hold it. I've done this. Oh, sorry.
We don't. No. Okay. I love it. So, welcome to the main stage. In back of me are the seats, 2,180 seats, and this is the main stage for Ruth Eckerd Hall. The stage, usually one of the first things I get is how big it looks. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how big it is. Well, it's bigger than what you would normally see because what you're seeing is the entire stage. These here, these drapes on either side, there and there, these are called legs. Those come down to this floor here, and it blocks your view from seeing backstage. So we have the wing areas on either side, which is not part of the performance space. So those legs come in, and then above me here are called borders. So those borders also bracket the lighting above me. So it gives us a little bit more of a smaller stage, as it were. Also, that backdrop comes in, so we have a crossover for people to walk back and forth behind the stage. So there's circular activity all the way around during the show. You don't see that, but that's part of it. So that's one of the first things I get. The second thing I get is, where's the trap door? And actually, it's not here, because we don't have one, and we won't have one. Because the reality is, as soon as somebody needs a trap door right there, the next show coming in will need a trap door right there, and then the next one will need a trap door over here. So if you ever go to a show and you see somebody drop through the floor and you go, aha, they dropped through a trap door, most likely if it's a roadhouse like what we are, where we're doing shows over and over, different ones every single day, what they've done is they've built a subfloor on top, and they've dropped through their subfloor and then shimmied out from underneath. Now if you go to Broadway and you see somebody go through a show like Phantom that's been there for 17,000 years, they've cut their floor. You know, there is a trap door there. I'm just not willing to do that because it's all over the place. We are a professional theater. We do a variety of performances here: Broadway, opera, rock and roll concerts, comedy, a little bit of everything. And by having that and being what I just said, a professional theater, we have to be able to adapt to any kind of show that comes in. Almost every show has three components: sound, lighting, and staging. However, depending on how much the show is needing and what they're carrying, meaning what's on the truck that they're bringing to the venue, it depends on what I need to supply. So most shows, it's a mix, okay? Broadway shows, they bring in everything, okay? So all this stuff above me, all these lights, the soft goods, the sound, everything is stripped out of this building. It's stored underneath us. There's a storage room underneath.
Wow.
And everything is stripped out, and the Broadway shows bring in everything. Their own lights, everything is brought in.
They bring their own electricians in and everything?
Yes, their own crew, their whole everything. My staff helps them out to build it, but they have their own tour and people that know the systems.
Wow.
So the other end of it is a comic, or like Kenny Loggins was here, he walked in with his guitar. We supplied everything else. We supplied the lighting and the sound and the staging. We even supplied the band and the backup singers for Kenny Loggins. So then obviously the third type is the mix between the two, which is actually usually what we get, where the show tours with their own sound system and they use our lighting. Or they bring in their own set and band instruments, and we supply the sound and lights. So that's what we deal with on a consistent basis, is what they're bringing and what we need to supply to make sure the show happens the way they want it to happen in every single venue. Because you got to remember, they're not just doing it here. They're somewhere else tomorrow and the next day after that. They're touring from place to place to place. So every venue like ours has to do the same thing. Okay? So that's why you're seeing all the lighting and the sound. That's all of ours in-house. All right? Now, the last piece to our venue is back over here, which is unique to our venue, actually. The building design, I have already mentioned a couple of times that Frank Lloyd Wright, this is a Frank Lloyd Wright design facility. And again, when we go into the lobby, I'll get into more detail on that. But while we're here, I want to point out that there was a gentleman by the name of George Eisenhower. George Eisenhower literally has wrote the book on acoustics for buildings and theatrical sound. He designed the shape of this hall and the shell, which I'm going to point out in just a second. So the shape of the hall, looking back out at the venue, you see it's all one big fan. It's all the seats are in one bowl. There's no balconies and alcoves, because when you start putting walls and enclosures, you lose the acoustics. So looking out here, the sound coming from the stage goes right to your ears. You don't have any option but to hear the sound. Also, you look at the walls, these walls are very curved, and the back wall, very small back wall. Not much room for the wall, you know, the sound to bounce off of. It literally has a very small wall. It's all designed for the acoustics. The ceiling is also curved and comes down. This is open, so the sound literally goes up and over this fly bridge. It's all designed by this gentleman by the name of George Eisenhower for the acoustics. The last piece to it is the band shell, and that's up here. So step a little bit closer. What I usually do is I put you up against the wall, because this big, huge monstrosity here is our band shell. And that is actually 30 tons of equipment. And you can see over here, there's there and there, those are the counterweights. And so the counterweights hold that up. And usually when people are up against the wall, I get one or two that kind of move forward.
That's it right there, that thing with
This
all-
here, this
yeah.
whole unit here, this is all one big piece of equipment, 30 tons. So the counterweights go up, the big huge monstrosity comes down, okay? These squares on the bottom, these are air casters, okay? Right there, there's a little tube holder right there, and the generator is downstairs. There's a big huge compressor that pumps air into that and lifts up the whole 30-ton unit on a cushion of air, and two people can move around 30 tons, just like a hovercraft, you know what I'm saying? It scoots across the water, same type of thing. That's what these air casters do. It takes about 20 minutes, about 25 to 30 minutes to completely install it. Yep. We usually use 6 guys. I said 2, but she's a bit temperamental, so we use 6 people. But yes, it's about a 30-minute process. So here comes the unit down, and it's like a collapsible cup. So you see the segments here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 segments, just like my collapsible cup. It unextends, just like the collapsible cup. Okay? On the ground, extends. And now it's a full band shell. It actually meets up with that front wall. You see that? The collapsible cup, it's like that. It extends out, just like that. So it's a full band shell, just like you would see outside at the amphitheater, outdoors, where full band shell matches up to the wall. There's only 3 of these in existence. One is at Gamage Hall, which you'll hear about in a minute, and another one's in Kansas. And all designed by that same gentleman, George Eisenhower, for Frank Lloyd Wright buildings.
You're telling us that this goes all the way up to that front wall?
Yes, ma'am. Yep. Each segment, it comes off the wall a little bit, and then each segment extends out that distance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it goes all the way up to the front wall. Yep. And actually, with that shell in place and the design of this building, I will not hesitate and tell you, even if I didn't work here, that this is one of the most exquisite acoustic buildings in the country. Hands down, it really is. Come here for a symphonic performance, a classical artist at a piano, Mr. James Galloway, the flautist, Mr. Perlman, those types of performances, exquisite, exquisite. Unfortunately, because of those great acoustics, once you put the augmented sound, the speaker systems in there, it muddies it up. And we used to get a lot of complaints about how loud it was and everything else. Until the renovation, when we spent almost $1 million on sound infrastructure and systems that are wrung out and designed specifically for this building. So that's what you're seeing. These speakers are designed specifically for this building, and now we get very few complaints anymore. On occasion we do, and that's usually because the engineer that's touring, somebody asked about, who's on the road with them touring. It is an engineer. They don't know that they're in such a great building, and they're still pushing the sound a little louder. Or what's even more common, if you come here for any of the 50s or 60s acts that we do, they're deaf. And so they're cranking up the sound on stage, so we have to crank up the sound in the mains or you'll get a double sound profile.
When you say they're deaf, you talk about the performers?
Yes.
Or people out there?
No, the performers. Well, them too. But but the performers. The performers are deaf, and so they crank it up on stage, and so instead of getting 2 profiles, we do 1. Okay. Couple things. This here, this is our seating wagon. This is called A, B, and C. Those are the first 3 rows of seats. However, those actually are removable. So this is on the same type of air caster system that the shell is on. That lowers down, it's on a hydraulic lift. It lowers down, it gets pushed off underneath the seats, and then it can come back up, and it's actually the front part of the stage. Or for when we do the Dillard's fashion show, sometimes that's part of the front stage. We've done wheelchairs down there with some of our school time presentations where the a school might have 30 or 40 wheelchairs. We can all put them down front there. So there's a variety of uses for that without the front seats in place, although it's usually with those front seats. The last thing I want to point out on stage is this here. This is our fly system. And this is what makes us a theater as opposed to just a regular shed or an arena or something else. This is what differentiates us by being a performing arts center or a theater. We have 54 line sets, okay? 54 sets of lines and weights. So you can see here's an arbor with weight in it. Each of these arbors, the 3 white bricks in the arbor, that is the weight of all the rope and all the pipes. So each of these 54 line sets here correspond to a set of pulleys and 54 pipes. So here's pipe, 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 pipe. Each of those are 72 feet long, and we can hang things on those pipes. So, let me explain. You've got an arbor here, down at the bottom, up this pipe, okay? Weight, pipe. You bring the pipe down, weight goes up. You put up to 1,500 pounds on that pipe. You put 1,500 pounds all the way up on the fly bridge, way up there. There's a loading bridge up there. 1,500 pounds there. Now it's balanced perfectly. So somebody that's up here can pull on that rope, and up and down goes 1,500 pounds very easily. One person can do it with one arm. And that's how, number one, these lights are hanging. But if you ever come to the Nutcracker and you see the Christmas tree growing, somebody's pulling a rope. Or if you're looking at a scene in a Broadway and it's inside of a house, okay, there's a backdrop with some windows, and next thing you know, it's all of a sudden outside with trees. Somebody pulled a rope, and in came or out came a backdrop of a scene of an exterior or an interior. So that's what you see. It's also why it's so high up, okay? Because this opening is 30 feet high. So my drape, my backdrop is 30 feet high. If somebody's pulling a rope and it goes up, it has to go double the height out. So it has to go up in there at least 30 feet. So in order you'd see it. So that's why it's double the height. And that's, like I say, what differentiates us from a theater from just a regular venue is this 54 line set. And that's a common number. Same with the stage size. Our stage size is a standard 60 foot wide by 40 feet deep. That's kind of an industry standard, because you have to remember these tours are going from venue to venue to venue. If the tour fits in a 75 foot opening and a 50 foot, they can't play in a lot of the venues. So they have to standardize and make a 60 by 40 opening. Okay? Any questions on anything I've covered so far before we go in and in the West Lobby? And then I'll be taking you back to the Murray if you need to. Some people said there were some things there. Any questions so far? Sweet. Follow me.
He does it. He does it. You can tell that it comes from here. Yeah. That's it.
You say that on stage. I'll tell that right now. I've got two stories.
Oh, you came back.
Okay, so who's in trouble? We've got all the cops here. I bet you it's that one right there.
You got me.
Look at all the cop cars.
No, it's me.
Oh, okay. It's me, take me. Okay, so, yes, sure.
You might want to know there's some oil.
I saw that. Yeah, it's actually, it's not oil. It's the drapes are all flame retardant. They have a flame retardant, and they just did it not too long ago. And so what you're seeing is it's dripping off of that because the air conditioners. You did. Yep.
I didn't want to look up because I didn't want to get my face.
Actually, interestingly, if you were to taste it, it tastes like salt water because it is. It's basically what the fire retardant is a spray of salt. Yeah.
Oh, wouldn't it be good to have it splashing?
No, they'll clean it up. Okay, so a couple of comments that was brought up. One thing that I usually do say on the stage, which I was remiss in doing. So looking out in the audience chamber, and those acoustics of the sound going out into the house, those same acoustics travel backwards, okay? So the audience, your noise, your clapping and saying whoop, whoop to the artist, they hear it just as well. Literally in the back of the house, you can whisper and hear it on stage. Lex Poppins, who was our director of marketing, wanted to say, I never like saying acoustically perfect. I don't believe there is such a thing as acoustically perfect. So he wanted to come up with something to say about the acoustics of the building. So what we did is I stood on the middle of the stage, just like this, with my back to the audience. And we had about 8 people spread out all over the audience chamber, all the way to the back of the house. And I had a pin in my hand, and I just let it go and dropped it, just like that. And as soon as it hit the floor, every hand went up. So Lex now could say, you can hear a pin drop in Ruth Eckerd Hall. But it's true. The same acoustics going out come backwards. And so one of the questions was about how the artists react in this venue. The other thing, looking out at the audience chamber, every artist likes to sell out. It's an ego thing. However, you and I both know they don't all the time. Even if, and one of the cool things about our building is even if an artist doesn't sell a quarter of the tickets, doesn't sell 500 tickets, only sells 1,500 tickets, the way this building is designed, with a very wide back row, there's almost 100 seats in that back row. Every show from the stage looks sold out to the artist, because back 500 seats is only like 5 rows in the back of the house. So, and you're sitting there, well, you're just sitting there, you're blocking the view from at least probably 2 rows. So the artist is looking out going, whoop, I sold out again. Really didn't, but it makes it look good. So the sound coming from, and you guys clapping, they absolutely, I hear it all the time, wow, what a great audience. It's also because I think we do have great audiences here, but it also has to do with some of that building design that brings the sound. And they can actually see further in this building, because our light bridge is way up. It's a higher light bridge than normal. It's on a higher angle, so it's not right in their eyes. When it's a lower angle, they're blinded by the spotlights and those front lights. Ours having the higher angle, they can actually see out a little bit further. They can't see all the way to the back of the house, but they can certainly see about the first 10 rows, maybe even 12 rows, which is great. So yes, they do see it, they do react to it. Okay, we are in the west lobby, and this is also a part of the renovation, as I mentioned before. We expanded this lobby. The original storefront was actually at these pillars, and it's been moved out a little bit further. We got all new a facelift with all new carpeting and paint and everything else. The last renovation was a 3-phase project. It was first the education building and the Murray, which I already told you about. Then the facelift that I already told you about with the backstage and the sound system and the lighting. And then the last piece is the grand concourse, and that's where we're going to end, which is over here. So facelift and all that. So expanded out. Our next renovation of this venue is going to be something we call the Ruth Eckerd Hall Experience. We're actually going to be adding a 5,000 square foot lobby on the front of the building here, which will encapsulate that tree and the valet island. So we won't have that anymore. That will all be new lobby space. The dress circle lounge will get a rework and will be expanded on both levels of second floor and on the first floor, along with, again, new carpeting and new work for the food and beverage department. That's our next project. And the Murray Studio Theater will get a facelift too, with an expanded lobby space and some additional areas. You'll hear more about that project. Along with the Capitol Theater, and I mentioned that I'm the general manager of that. I've been overseeing the construction project. It's a $7 million project in downtown Clearwater, right at the historic theater, the Capitol Theater, which was built in 1921. And we are renovating that, and that will be opening with our first show on December 18th. So hopefully everybody will come out and see that, and I'll take you for a tour of that venue too. Okay, West Lobby though, I want to point out a few things. As I mentioned, we are a Frank Lloyd Wright inspired building. We do not have the stamp of a legitimate Frank Lloyd Wright building because he was dead by the time we were built. However, the story goes, and I know this to be true, is he was friends with Gamage, a gentleman named Mr. Gamage, out in Arizona. And one night at dinner, Mr. Gamage was talking with Frank Lloyd Wright and said, hey, you know, I want to build a performing arts center at University of Arizona. Frank Lloyd Wright said, oh, hey, guess what? I just happen to have an opera house that I designed for Baghdad that didn't get built. He was designing a lot of buildings and bridges in Baghdad, pre-war and tore it all up type of thing. And this was a commissioned piece that he was paid for, but it never got built, so it wound up on a shelf. He gave those to Gamage. Gamage went to the University of Arizona and said, we have to build this theater. And they said, nope, we don't have any money, forget it. So back up on the shelf they went. Frank Lloyd Wright died a few years later. Gamage took those plans down again and said, we have to build this now. It'll be the last public building built by Frank Lloyd Wright. And so, yes, they agreed, they raised the funds, and Gamage Hall on the University of Arizona, still there right now, was built with those plans for this opera house in Baghdad. Okay, Frank Lloyd Wright is dead, so who builds it? His son-in-law, William Wesley Peters. William Wesley Peters built Gamage Hall. Fast forward to Clearwater, wants to have a performing arts center built on it, and they enlist the Taliesin, which is Frank Lloyd Wright's work, and William Wesley Peters takes those same plans, adapts them again, same as the Van Wezel down in Sarasota, our sister building. That building was also built by him. This building was built modeled after Gamage Hall, University of Arizona, Opera House in Baghdad, Ruth Eckerd Hall by William Wesley Peters. So that's how we got it. Some of the things that he brought to it, not only the shape and the design, the same bowl is the same thing that was designed by William Wesley Peters and Frank Lloyd Wright and George Eisenhower, same thing we have here, but also the fact that you can see the grout lines. That's work that's very indicative to his work. Sometimes when I wear a tie, I have this actual shape in this hanging staircase in my tie, which is a Frank Lloyd Wright tie. This work here on the wall, the trellis, very, very indicative to his work. That's all these little accent things that were brought to us by William Wesley Peters as a Frank Lloyd Wright inspired building. The other thing is, if you go into any square rooms, they've been added. He did not design very much square. Everything had angles. You see these angles and these curves and the way this shape is. This is all, again, indicative to Frank Lloyd Wright. Also, as I mentioned, very short in stature, so his ceiling height. The fact that this is as open as it is, which is not that open for a grand lobby, is actually because of his work. So those are all the things that were brought to us. The last piece is that we're Ruth Eckerd Hall. Who's Ruth Eckerd? Real person. Jack and Ruth. Jack Eckerd is the mogul behind Eckerd Drugs that started in downtown Clearwater. He bought the naming rights to name the hall after his wife, Ruth. Real people used to come here all the time. I've known them for years. They both have passed now, but they came here all the time for shows, and really great people to be part of it. But they bought the naming rights for the hall. This here is our mural for our 25th anniversary. It was painted by Christopher Still. Christopher Still considers this his masterpiece. It was a 2-year project for him. And what it is we were just standing on the stage about where the little ballerina was there and facing out to the audience. These are all real people, pretty much right in here. Might even be some of you, if I'm not mistaken, are in this here. This is Jack and Ruth Eckerd. They're actually wearing what they wore on opening night of the theater. You can see all, oh shoot, I don't have my name tag. You can see all these folks here. These are all of our logo. And normally, I don't have a name tag on it. But my name tag, if you look closely at it, you see our logo is of different types of performers. Okay? So that's what you're seeing here is our logo come to life and doing a performance on the stage. And beckon you, see, she's welcoming you to the stage. Oh, there you go. To come on and see the show. You see we're making it snow. Here, look, there's 2 guys up there pulling the ropes. Remember I just told you about the fly system? You can see the 2 guys there, they're pulling that rope, and that's how they're making it snow above the Nutcracker ballerina. This is Robert Freeman, that's the past president and CEO of the building. He has a contract getting ready to be signed for the show. Up there, that's actually Christopher Still looking down and studying the painting. And like I said, these are all real people, a lot of the namesakes, the Hoffmans and the Campbells and that sort of folk that's in there, donors. We've got some of our ushers. Back here, up in this area, William Wesley Peters, Frank Lloyd Wright, a Greco-Roman actor, all in that area. Probably the most famous person's right there, right behind the saxophone player. That's me. And then this guy right over here sitting down, that's Mickey Rooney getting ready to go out on stage. So, great painting. There's a little key over here. Someday when you have some free time, check it out. I love it. It's beautiful. We also have them for sale if you're interested in having one of those in your house. Coming over here, and I'll show you the last thing we're going to talk about, and then I'll let you go, and I think I'm pretty much right on time. Pretty good, pretty good. When I first started here back in 1996, I mentioned already that lobby was at the first storefront pillars, and actually the wall was right here. This was a wall. This was actually a concession stand right here, and there was one restroom right over there. And that was it in this space. You couldn't do that. And actually, I don't know how we did shows with 2,180 people, because we didn't add any seats. We didn't, it wasn't like we added 1,000 seats out there with this. So we had all those lobbies dumped into this space. And if you ever come here for a show now and see how busy this space is, I mean, this place gets full. Think about this not being here, so pretty amazing. Actually, interestingly enough, and I learned this when I toured Gamage Hall, the reason there's no lobby is because the great room was the lobby. That was the original design. The original concept for this venue was you actually entered on the south side. Those ramps going up, you entered up and came down to the portals and down to the shows. So you entered on it. This whole building was supposed to be oriented this way, originally on paper. But when they got here, they realized there was a natural hill. And so instead of excavating all that and reworking the whole hill, they just turned the building. Well, by doing that, now they're on the back side. They couldn't do that as the main entrance, so they changed it and made this the main entrance. But that was the original concept. You came up the ramps, and then you came in the upper galleries and into the great room. That's why there was a big, huge bar there, and that's why the bathrooms shared. Those that have been here for a while, you remember we used to share restrooms. We'd have a wedding in there, and Motley Crue on the main stage, and Motley Crue people were going to the wedding, and the wedding people were going to the concert. It was a nightmare. So now, with the renovation, we separated, gave them their own restrooms. We separated the main stage dressing rooms, so now they're, but that's why, because it was part of it. There wasn't a separation, it was all part of the same venue. But now we've adapted. So, during that renovation, what we did was they took out 2/3 of the seats, okay? So you can see the angle. That's actually the angle of the seating chamber above us. So we're underneath the seating chamber. So here's the angle. Stage is down here. Here's the back seats. What they did is they took out 2/3 of the seats. They dug a hole, put back in the seats, leaving the hole. So this is the hole, okay? So this is the hole from one side to the other. Now we can cross over and get from one side to the other. We have all our bar space. We have our concession stands. Everything's down here. We can flow from one side. Because before, if you were seated in a different side of the theater, you were on the east side or west side, the only way to get there was across the front row, the back row, or outside. And during the rain, outside wasn't very good. Interestingly, the original design for the hall, and with Gamage Hall, there's a corridor in back of the last row to get from one side to the other. But that was value engineered out of the project because it was going to cost $60,000. So they saved $60,000. However, during the renovation, we spent $4 million to do this. But if we had gotten that corridor, we wouldn't have done this, and this has been amazing. So last thing I want to point out is this guy and this lady right here. If, again, you look at Heather's name tag, because Jeff doesn't have his, you will actually see that it says Ruth Eckerd Hall at the Richard B. Baumgartner Center for the Performing Arts. Well, who's Richard B. Baumgartner? That guy, okay? So his wife, June, actually donated the land, 38 acres, to the city with the stipulation that within 2 years, a performing arts center be built on it. That's what kick-started the project. That's when the 14 gentlemen got together, Jack Eckerd being one of them, raised the funds, $16 million, if I remember correctly, to build this hall back in, 30 years ago. But this is Richard B. and June, and they donated the land. So that's why you see it at the Richard B. Baumgartner Center for the Performing Arts. Because originally there was going to be the one theater, there was a museum and a gazebo and a little library, and there was the potential of another little theater. That never came about. We never became the center for the performing arts. Like if you think about the way the Performing Arts Center across the bay is, they've got the Straz, the Jabe, they got 4 or 5 theaters. You don't say I'm going to the Carol Morsani Hall. You say I'm going, well now the Straz. You say I'm going to the Straz. When you get there, then you get divided up into the 1 or 4 different halls. Here we only had the one hall. So everybody only thought about Ruth Eckerd Hall, and the Richard B. Baumgartner kind of got pushed to the side because we never were a center. You only came to the one. Now that we've got more, now that we have the Murray, now that we have the Marsha P. Hoffman, there's talk about whether or not they're reusing the name, but we'll still keep it underlying because they built the land. One last quick little tidbit that I just found out about a year ago. Interestingly, as I said, the stipulation was within 2 years a performing arts center be built here. Well, they were still raising money. They hired a contractor, but they weren't building, and they were literally coming down to the wire about building this hall. They weren't going to make it. So what they said, they freed up some funds and just said, build a wall. So they actually built the back wall. They just built it up about 10 feet and built it. But they had started the project within 2 years. So they built that wall, and then they kept raising the funds, and they finally built it actually about 4 or 5 months after that. But yeah, they were coming down to the wire. They're like, just build something. We got it. We got it. So yes.
I don't know if this is correct, but gossip.
Yeah.
Local gossip
Sure.
from some longtime kids around here. The lady in bronze was a waitress at the Kapok Tree restaurant, and she's rather younger than him, and there was a big to-do at the time that he got his second wife that was like young enough to be his daughter, and everybody was like, oh.
Yep,
So, did you
that
know
is
that's
true. That is true.
That is true.
Actually, the K-pop tree was done by Richard B. Baumgartner. That was actually where he made a good chunk of his money. He also had Baumgartner's, which was across the street, which is now the rug place and the independent beer place. That was Baumgartner's. So those were two of his big, along with a lot of other things that he had his hand in. Actually, at one point, he owned most of the land in this area. Pretty much as far as you could see, he owned all this land. But yes, she was much younger than him and got married. There was a lot of controversy about afterwards, too, after he died, and what the kids were doing with the money, and it wasn't a good scenario, what happened with the K-pop tree and all the artwork that was in there. The bust is actually kind of funny, because we got the bust, and the guys that went over to get it, you know, the question was, where, at what point, hey, if any of you have this, I'm sorry, I don't mean to, but what point in your life do you have bronze busts made of yourself to be on display in your house? Does anybody have that? No? Okay, because I want to be there. I want to be at that status. Do you have one?
My baby shoes.
Yeah, well, no, I understand the baby shoes. I'm talking about a bronze bust of your head and face on display. However, what's even interestingly is that this painting, very similar one, only a full size of him, okay, full size of him, was above the fireplace in the house. Does anybody know their house? Anybody been there? Okay, good. So, full size of Richard B. Baumgartner is secured over the mantelpiece above the fire. Bronze bust of June is on the other side of the chairs, facing there, on a pedestal, along with her new husband's bronze bust.
Oh, funny.
Facing Richard B., facing the two bronze busts. I didn't see it, but the two maintenance guys, Danny and Sergio, went down, and Tyson, I think, went down there to get this thing, and they're like, first of all, it was like, where do you put a bronze bust of yourself in your house, but then also facing? I don't know. Anyway, so we have that.
Creepy.
Yeah, well, and that's another story, because we had it in Norma's office, and she got creeped out about it, so we put a box over it to kind of, well, we decided to do something a little bit better, and we snuck a radio underneath there. And so she comes back, and Tyson are in the green room. We hear her tip-tapping, and we take the radio and go, psst, and you hear,
You guys are bad.
then we go, you hear her back up, psst, she stops again. A little bit longer pause. You hear her chair kind of move, and we're dying. We're on the floor laughing. So you hear her start back up again, and we go, let me out. Boom! She was out of that office. We're on the floor laughing. She comes around, you guys, you scared the heck out of me. That was great. At her retirement, we brought the bus back out and covered it up and brought it in. Yeah, too funny. So, yeah, that's June. And please take a little bit more look at the mural at some point. Also, take a look at our translucent alabaster there. It's a beautiful ode to Ruth, which is when she passed away. There's a lady in the alabaster going up to the heavens, and it's in honor of Ruth when she passed away. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. And do take a look. We have galleries upstairs that artworks gets changed out every so often. So make sure you get up there. Don't just, a lot of people just come in and get something to eat, go to the show. But there's other things that happen here. So, and if you see me around, if you have any questions about anything, please let me know. And that's my tour.
Thank you,
Yay.
Jeff.
Oh. Standing ovation.
Yeah, I know, right? No choice.